Hi, everybody. Some Tuesday thoughts. So, when you spend a lot of time designing game systems, um, obviously the thought occurs to you from time to time. Well, what is the game system for? What's it there to achieve? What's the point of it? You got to ask that, haven't you? This seems like an obvious question to ask, but when you kind of project yourself onto into the kind of the gaming experience, the role play gaming experience, the table, as it were, you recognize that lots of people, the experiences that people have of different games are different. Again, it sounds like an obvious thing to say. That people get from games different things, different pleasures, different engagements. And sometimes they don't get anything at all. Sometimes it's not a game for them. Sometimes the game pisses them off or disappoints them or bores them. And I think if you try to write a game system that's going to please everybody all the time, you can't do. It's like trying to write a pop song that everyone's going to like. You can't do it. So you have to write a game system that achieves a particular thing or tries to achieve a particular thing, tries to create a particular experience. And there are people will like that, people won't. Much as a particular kind of restaurant will have a particular kind of experience and you either go to it or you don't. And it's made me think a lot about D&D and what the experience of D&D actually is, or what the experience of D&D is meant to be. And I think there's so much that's perhaps as a result of it being the trailblazer, being the original one, and being written by quite a handful of some quite reactionary blokes in the early to mid 1970s. There are certain things within the heart of D&D that I really do question, particularly the idea of wandering around a maze of cabins and killing everything you find. You know, um, s- avoiding some traps, solving some problems, but murdering things that we notionally think of as evil, um, for the the piles of gold that they have amassed from previous foolhardy and stupid travellers who've wandered around cave networks trying to kill everything that they can find. What what's that about? Why are we doing that? Why is that the kind of the definitive expression of roleplay gaming? The clues in the title, Dungeons and Dragons. What's the point of it? And it emulates something that is familiar in the real world, which is without something like some dangerous radical. This is kind of the experience of colonialism. Europeans have, for the past 500 years, gone to every corner of the world, wandered around, killed everything that they could find, and stolen things. Um, it might be in the game that, some poor fucking dragons just minding its own business. uh, a wizard, a cleric, a warrior, and a thief turn up and stab it to death and blast it with fire. Charming. There's a really horrible piece of, I think, Larry Elmore art. And the more I look at it, the more kind of disgusting and distasteful I find it. Again, it's an adventuring party, and they're lynching a baby dragon. You can find it, it's out there. I'll post a link to it later on. And kind of laughing, they're cheering and smiling. And this dragon's offspring is hanging by a rope around its neck from a tree. And, without making any wild kind of comparisons, there are photos like that from the 1920s in the Deep South, but it ain't a dragon. And it just makes me wonder what the person creating that piece of art was thinking. Obviously, we're talking about a fictional situation, and dragons aren't real, so you can kind of do what you want with them, or can you? Because dragons aren't real, but we're talking about things within a shared imagination. And is it okay for a bunch of people to come together and say, act out a sadistic fantasy? Arguably not, because the people at that table are the ones perhaps affected and shaped by that. And lots of people really don't want that anyway. So, anyway, where am I going with this great ramble? Well, I'm thinking about, as I was talking about yesterday, about how you create and write a superhero fantasy, superhero roleplay game. And you start off by going over some very, very well trodden ground and asking yourself the simple question of, what would you do? Honestly, what do you think you would do if you discovered you could fly? If you just discovered that you could lift up a bus? If you discovered you could walk through walls? If you could read people's thoughts? If you were an incredible inventor and created a piece of technology that gave you powers beyond, you know, the kind of the army in your country, what would you do? Most of us probably wouldn't do anything. We'd be very frightened of those powers, try not to use them, and be very distressed by them. And actually, in a lot of superhero stories, that's kind of how it begins. What if you're in a situation where that choice isn't open to you? There's somebody else who has these kinds of powers. They are going to use them to hurt people. Then you're left with the question of, if I can stop this, should I stop it? And that's where I think we're sort of more likely to start to take action. And so if you imagine that scenario, you discover you have superpowers, and you discover that all of the existing people in the world that did have superpowers that you've been aware of for a long, long time, the kind of celebrities, have all gone, every last one. And now the people who monitor the superpower, they're very interested in you. They might not know about you, perhaps, but they will be very interested in you if you crop up. And other people as well, very bad people, will be very interested in you. Do you become part of the journey towards resolving what's happened to all of those missing heroes? Or do you defend the community that you know and love? And what I'm looking to create isn't a journey, because these superhero RPGs aren't really like D&D anyway, so it's a bit of a bad example. But what I'm trying to do is bake into this roleplay game, Nova City Heroes, the ideas around impossible choices. Because if choices are easy, they're not choices. They're just, low-level decisions. Choices being forced to really decide who you save, who you can't save, what you fight for, what you sacrifice, what you walk away from, what you protect. That's at the heart of it all. And the idea of there being a living community for the hero to protect. And also the idea that unless there is that community connection, the hero becomes disconnected from everything, really. This is where they sort of veer off into either a form of madness, or they have to embrace the dark side of themselves. And there is from whence the supervillain is created. So, yeah, what will people get out of that at this moment? I don't know. I'm waiting for playtesters. Hint, hint, looking at nobody. Mm-hmm. But what I think people will get from it is, I hope people will get from it, is something like a game version of the experience of the superhero blockbuster. Um, I think sometimes some supers games that kind of recreate like superhero Saturday morning cartoons from the 80s and 90s. I'm thinking I want Nova City Heroes to recreate the cinematic experience. And I will here's the hill I will die on is I will defend the Snyderverse to the end. You know, if you've seen the extended versions of Justice League and um, Batman versus Superman, these are great movies, but you know you need to take a day off to watch them. Um, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking. Real choices and real pain, if you want. Um, the idea that you're creating a game system where people go around uh, endlessly from triumph to triumph. Oh, God, how boring. Can you imagine how dull that would be? So, thoughts, folks? I'd love to hear them. And I'm going to talk about non-supers things tomorrow, I think, because I've got a plan emerging, which I should tell you all about for the non-superhero fantasy stuff that we do. There are several plans, right? But anyway, more on that tomorrow. Take care, guys. All the best. Bye bye.